Hello everybody, I'm Gavin and I am the British Bookworm. So today I'm reviewing a small book that I found on Amazon to do with climate change. I like the title of the book and so I was drawn to it. The book's only going to get a 1 out of 5 and I'm going to try and keep this review fairly quick because I don't believe it's really worth that much time. It's written out in 101 paragraphs, a list of 101 things which prove or insinuate that there's a that argues against the alarmism. All right, I really like the title and I love the notion that she starts with Greta's homework. She does need to do a lot of homework as that child, and I know she's not a child anymore, but to me she's always going to be a child because that's how I will always view her. And I know I shouldn't say this, but I don't like her. Greta's homework. 101 truths about climate change that everyone should read, especially hysterical, hypocritical mythmakers by Zina Cohen. Now, I don't know anything about the author. I just bought it because I like the title. It's only going to get a 1 out of 5 because I don't really rate it. Some of the claims in it I think are spurious in the sense of her opinions. As someone who's a cyclist, when she makes claims about people cycling to work holding up traffic, I think that's a bit stupid in the scale of the conversation and the few other bits. But most of the points are spot on, which I'm going to address in this review, although I'm going to try and keep this review quite quick. I don't know much about her. She's written the author, Zina Cohen, is the best-selling author of The Shocking History of the EU. I haven't read it and I know nothing about it. But I do know that she used to be an activist, or not an activist maybe, but someone who was frightened about climate change in the past, and she's obviously done her research, and now she feels like it is fear-mongering and alarmism. Now, I like the idea of it's been Greta Thunberg's homework because I think she needs to be educated and that she needs to be put in a room of scientists that can question a lot of these ideas and alarmism, and have scientists from even the IPCC talk to about what the actual reports state. But that's another issue. Now that goes on to a tangent of an issue that I have a massive problem with, is how the mainstream media, activists, alarmists and politicians are hiding and using for their own benefit the alarmism and fear-mongering stories and supposed scientific basis of climate change going into the next 80 years in the future. And I do not understand, and I'm going to come to this possibly on another video, why the IPCC scientists do not hold a very serious press conference and actually challenge the way the media and activists are presenting this conversation and this argument. And I do believe that it's because they're partly behind it and they like the fact that it encourages more money and funding into the system of this this project. I don't know what to call it, because I feel, as someone who's just doing a lot of research on this issue at the minute in my own life, and have looked into this for over 20 years by the way, I'm still called by those who believe it that I'm a moron, you know, that I come across like that. I've had conversations online with people and they come across as so self-righteous and so smart and so intelligent. It's almost like because you're a Christian, you're a fool or you're an idiot. And the atheists are all the smart and intellectuals. It's got that kind of a kind of attribution to it, onto it. So anyway, Greta is someone who has been used. If you look into history of propaganda, they will. If you look into it, I don't think you need to do much research on this. I think if you look into propaganda, people like using children to push notions of fear or agendas, because children can't be attacked very easily. They can't be silenced, and the feminist heroic role has more it has more power to the argument. So to me, it's a massive propaganda campaign from the Green left movement. I would like to know about who finances Greta and her family, her political leanings, the upbringings that she's had, her parental leanings towards the left or towards green or towards communism. I've heard that on my personal investigation and research, that her parents were communistic in their ideologies. And so when you have people who are brought up in a political spectrum that, along with mental health conditions, or like Asperger's and things like that, then when the media jump and use and push and promote a child in that way, I see that as child abuse, and I really find it extremely disgusting and offensive that she's being pushed around. So yeah, that's a key thing that I would say. Also, as the author of this book puts, the damage that she has done to the youth, to the young generation, is massive. The fear that she's created, bringing up children in a state of fear, is not the way we wish to use and bring up our children. And having her being pushed all over, like being presented at Glastonbury, without, you got to see the pictures of the after Glastonbury of all the rubbish and litter and tents and shit left lying around, and the irony of her going to do a speech to a massive audience and they're sending her around like a superstar and promoting her ideology and the green theology, I'm going to call it theology, but I might as well, the green ideology. Now, I'm open to being corrected in this conversation as someone who's a truth seeker, so I'm going to put that to you in this video. But I do have massive issues, even if you convince me that with the world heating up directly attributed to man-made CO2, okay, and we say, right, we definitely know the percentages to this conversation, the percentage to man-made CO2 is causing this global warming that's unprecedented. And if that's an actual fact, then I'll be open to be changed if I see this evidence. Now, for those who see this video and say, well, what are you, an idiot? It's all over the place. As someone who has spent thousands of hours probably over the years, not like academically, obviously, but studying, reading, watching different documentaries, listening to different scientists, maybe it's not thousands, but it's hundreds. It's in the hundreds of hours. I find it extremely offensive and father fucking stupid when people come to me as, I'm not a thick person, even though I'm not an academic or a layman, that someone like me who's spent hours of my personal life and time researching this subject because I'm passionate about the earth, the environment, that people just jump on the notion of spuriously throwing shit at me ad hominem, and basically an ad hominem attack on me and all those who are academic, who challenge this narrative that we are basically hitting a doomsday scenario. So I think she's done a terrible amount of damage to the world's health, mental health, as this child, and the movement behind her, and all these activists like Stop Oil. They all believe that they're doing the right thing, but to me, I think they're doing a terrible, terrible disservice to humanity. And I do believe that a lot of them are so moronic they cannot see through the lies and fears, that even if you believe in global warming in the way it's being presented by the official scientists, that is so far removed from what the activists and fearmongers are saying. And that, by the way, is a fact. That is something that I know is 100% true. That whether you believe in global warming is created by man-made CO2 emissions, right, to the fear-mongering, alarmism and activists, the way they present the argument is fraudulent, it's very deceitful, it's lies, and it's behind an agenda to be liked more, to gain more money, to more power, more social authority, more societal status, and for political elections, for campaigns, for funding. There's so much behind that side of it. So if you've got to put the science to one side of it, which may have the truth in it, so I'm going to say, right, I will listen. I'm open to being corrected on my own views on this, to the fear mongering which the Greta element represents. So one of the things that I'm going to just go through some of the comments, I'm going to read some of these to you, and then I'm going to finish this review. Point 13. At the last British general election, the Labour Party promised to plant 2 billion trees by 2040. Presumably, no one in the Labour Party had bothered to work out that this involved covering an area the size of Wales with nothing but trees. Or maybe the Labour Party politicians realised that there was no chance of winning their election and having to meet their promise, which is funny, isn't it? But so, to cover the size of Wales in trees all over Great Britain, it is a pretty preposterous statement, isn't it? And so that's the kind of rhetoric that politicians, to prove my last point, or one of the points I made earlier, that is the kind of rhetoric politicians use to sound better to get green voters and people who believe in it. If we say 50% of society believes in the fear-mongering and believes in the official, supposedly the official arguments behind climate change, then they're going to get a huge percentage of votes through the political spectrum of being on the side of that. So that's a key thing right there. And then to move on, I do apologise, but I'm trying to note my notes out now. I like what she says is climate change myth makers. She uses the term CCMs in her book. So that was one of her points. This is not quite as smooth as it as probably should do writing a book, doing a review on a book. Let's go to point 38. Point 38. Let's have a look at it. Where are we? 38. Right. Renewables such as solar energy and wind power provide only a tiny portion of our current electricity needs. That's a fact. That's a fact that I've gained from multiple sources of research. We will need to carpet the countryside with solar farms, wind farms and huge log burning incinerators to increase that proportion significantly. And without the subsidies which are currently paid by consumers, that's us, to rich landowners, the electricity produced would be horrifically expensive. It's important to remember that because of the subsidies which have been paid to rich farmers operating wind farms and solar farms, ordinary people have had to pay more for their heating and many thousands have died in the cold weather. An interesting fact that I've gained from other research is it's absolutely astronomically higher the people that die per year all over the world from cold than rather than heat waves. So that's something that is an actual fact that is proven in all the scientific and data that I've looked at on any side of the spectrum. So let's go to point 51 of the book. I'm only picking the smaller points because I don't want to take too much of your time, those who have watched this video up to this point. So let's have a look at point 51. This is a really good example of the kind of shit that you get, and I know that this is right because I've come across this in another book with a lot of scientific data. So point 51, CCMs, climate change myth makers, blamed a Californian forest fire on global warming. This is a prime example of how every event is attributed and connected to the story to push the fear narrative deeper and deeper so that we cannot reverse course into what I would classify in my current research is a truly horrific possibility of a future where more people are going to suffer because of the things we wish to do to prevent something that's unpreventable. I do wish these idiots would do a little research before opening up their laptops and firing off their screams of anguish. The average annual acreage of American forest burned is now around 6.6 million. Back in 1928, the average annual acreage of American forest lost to fires was 41.7 million. I realise that millennial CCMs aren't terribly good at maths, but I'm pretty confident that 41.7 million is a bigger figure than 6.6 million. Similarly, forest fires in Australia had nothing to do with climate change. And I'm sorry, but that's just true. And if you look at the data, which I'm looking through other books at the moment, they all support what she's saying there. Now, you're not going to hear that because they have like 1,000 examples of evidence, But if you actually look into things that people are saying on this argument, this is the problem. One of the problems that I have with the this movement of the global warming movement is that if you look into it, any of these points, the very large percent, because no one has the time to look at all of them. But if you look at the key ones, you'll find that they're just bollocks. The ones that I'm looking at, a lot of the facts that I'm looking at are bollocks, or my sources that I'm looking at are lying. So that's another option which I'm open to. All right. So point 54. Now this is a really significant one that really gets my back up massively. The car industry is already struggling to find enough cobalt, lithium, and to make batteries for electric cars. The planet's supply of these goodies is very limited. Oh, and there is, of course, a massive demand for copper for all the wiring. The mining required to dig up these elements requires lots of huge fuel-guzzling equipment. As an aside, half of all the cobalt needed is mined in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I suggest that the CCMs do a little research into the Democratic Republic of Congo. The price of the materials required for electric car batteries is going to soar, and the mines mean much more despoliation. I don't even know what that means. The fans of electric cars never seem to be worried about this, nor do they campaign to leave the cobalt and lithium in the ground as they do with oil. Good point. Many of the rare earths used in the manufacture of electric car batteries are dug out of the ground by, and this is what I was saying. Let's start that again, yeah. Many of the rare earths used in the manufacture of electric car batteries are dug out of the ground by children as young as 7. So, you driving an electric car out there, do you understand what I've just read out? You're by default are supporting child slavery and child abuse. Unbelievable. Sanctimonious electric car buyers will doubtless be delighted to know that they're providing work for so many under 12s. I mean, I know what she's saying there is a fact. I know also that I think the data that I've come across is it takes you to dig 500,000 tons to get enough lithium, I think it is, for one battery. So you have to dig 500,000 tons of material out to get to one battery or produce one battery. So what damage has been created? If you look into the electric car industry, it's one of the biggest fucking cons out there at the minute. And people drive electric cars, and because they don't investigate or research, that they think that they're doing something sanctimonious. They're being sanctimonious, and they just think that they're doing something superior to other people driving other cars. If you look into petroleum cars, they're actually not that different in efficiency to emissions than electric cars. The last book I've just read, it says that in a car lifetime, an electric car produces 26 tons of carbon emissions, whereas a petroleum car produces 36 tons. But you have to look into the production of both and the amenities and the efficiencies and the life consequences of both cars to see whether that story adds up. So I'm going to read you one more out. She makes some very good points, but I just do think it's a pretty one of the issues I have with this book, by the way, is it's more about some of the points that she's put in are more opinions. I can tell they're more opinions than actual data and facts. So that's one of the reasons why I've scored it such a low score. Now, to finish off, 80.80. The UK government has announced that car manufacturers will no longer be able to sell motor cars powered by diesel or petrol after the year 2035, or possibly earlier. This will mean that someone will have to manufacture and install around 20 million charging points between now and then. And there will also need to be a great many new power stations built. It takes up to 20 years to build a power station, as time is already running out. Ending the sale of petrol and diesel vehicles will mean that millions of second-hand cars will have to have little or no residual value and will have to be destroyed. Gas boilers and heating systems will also need to be replaced, since the government has announced that it will be illegal to install a gas boiler in a new home after 2025. As the manufacture and servicing of gas boilers and heating system ends, so older homes will have to switch to electricity. Disposing of all these cars and central heating systems will cost trillions and will cause severe financial hardship to millions. That is extremely important. When these people are being activists in the streets, they're looking at the here and now, and they're looking at an alarmist. Whether you want to feel sorry for them because they are the consequences. Their actions are the consequences of propaganda and lies, which they are. Even if you look at the official IPCC data, which I haven't, but I've read enough breakdowns of it to understand that even they do not present these fear-mongering stories of the future, and the crops stop growing and all these consequences of sea levels basically drowning out islands, and the consequences. I've read another book recently, which I'm going to do another review on, which goes into far more serious depth about this, and that's where I'm coming at from this. So you've got to look at the whole picture, and when you have people who are just literally stopping cars in the city, and they're thinking that they're like the suffragette movement, and you're looking at this and you're looking at the actual serious scientific literature or the serious scientists and what they're actually saying, and I'm listening to people with the intellect to break down these IPCC reports that are on my side, that are on the pro side, the pro man-made CO2 emission alarming view. They are saying, the scientists aren't saying we have 12 years. The 12-year thing is just not an actual serious thing, okay? And so every time you hear sound bites like that, they're just factually not true. And the consequences of this movement and the consequences of this is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about talking about it and reading so much about it at the minute, is the consequences are huge. Now, there are some silly things in this. I think peak oil is one of them. The idea that this is, she says in this, one of her points is that the reason why we are so desperate to move onto electricity and to move away from fossil fuels is because we're running out of oil in the ground, and the idea of peak oil. Now, personally, I may be wrong on this, but from my own bit of research on this over the years, it would seem that every time we think we're running out of oil, we find more oil, or the better technologies to take the oil from the ground. So from my understanding of it, that's another one of these fear-mongering stories that have been going on for a long time, for decades, for many decades, the idea that we're running out of oil. So there are some really spurious points in this book which I've already mentioned or said that is the case. So that's why I'm only scoring a 1 out of 5. It feels more like, I'm going to get hit with this, but it feels hit for saying this. It feels more like someone who's a housewife who's put a book together based on some very strong views. I do agree with the majority of the things that she says in this book. I do think that some of her points are really good, and I do think she's right that the alarmism is absolutely outrageous, and it's going to do. This is the thing, right? If you really spend the time looking into this subject, even if I'm wrong and that there is a threat to us, the threat is being represented in a totally wrong way by the activists, by the politicians, and by the celebrities, and by, to some degree, some of the scientists who've stated officially that they're using fear to try to create movement politically. Now, I'm not going to change subjects because I'm reviewing this book, but the facts are that the alarmism is so out of proportion to the actual story and the actual science and what it says that you've got to understand that these people from Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion are just basically being either brainwashed or they have extremist tendencies, and that they are somehow psychiatrically driven to those kind of mentalities. But if you look into it, I know some of them are the police and some of them are supposedly like scientists and teachers, but the majority of them that I see are retired, pensioners who have used oil all their lives and have been part of the richest generation down on paper in the history of humankind, where they've been able to buy cars and buy houses out of their own wages, where our generation are struggling to do either of them, to get mortgages. So the irony that when you see these, if you look at any stop oil protest, or look at any news outlets presenting them, showing them, blocking streets, if you look at the actual faces of the majority of them, a lot of them don't look like they're working, a lot of them look like pensioners, and they've probably benefited all their lives from the use of fossil fuels, and now they want us to be at a loss and to suffer terribly financially. So I'm going to leave that. If you like this review, give us a like here and subscribe to this channel. If you don't agree with my views on climate change, listen, this is part of the conversation. We need to learn to be able to have communication and to talk to each other in a way that doesn't basically, we're not wanting to chop each other's heads off. The reason why I feel so strongly about this issue and why I'm spending a lot of time personally and have done all my life on it is, first of all, I love the Earth. I think that if you look into the science about the planet Earth and the galaxy and the universe, we are so blessed to be on this little ball traveling through the universe, and that we should do our absolute damnedest to protect it with everything we can. So I'm saying that after everything I've just said, that is really one of my strongest opinions that I could present in any video. But the consequences, if you look into the science, about the way the atmosphere works, the way we're situated from the sun and Jupiter, the way the Jupiter protects us from meteorites and comets, if you look into the balances of our solar system, it is truly a miracle. And so when we look at our Earth, we have to protect it with so much love and so much respect to nature, to the beautiful planet. However, the consequences of what we call at the moment in society the left, or the Green Movement, or the Democratic, or the Labour, however you wish to put it in a partisan theme, the consequences of that, of those energy policies of the Green Movement to humanity could be horrendous financially to all those who are still in poverty. 800 odd million people in the world are in energy poverty, and so and 4 billion people live in poverty, and so something like that. So when you look at the data and you look at, well, if we follow Extinction Rebellion, Stop Oil, the activists and these people, if we follow what they are asking us to do politically, it is literally economic and social fabric suicide. It is literally suicide, and the consequences are going to literally end to a war on a scale unprecedented if we follow what they want to do. And it is literally an attack on progressive society and wealth and the wealth and Western economies. But that's another issue altogether. 30 minutes in, I never intended to get that long on such a thing, but anyway, thank you for your time. If you watched to this point, thank you for your time, and thank you for watching this video. So with that, I hope I don't recommend it, I don't recommend this book, but if you like the idea of it, then go and buy it. It is a decent read, to be fair to her, but I just think that it's not one of the best books I've been reading on this topic. So, thank you for watching, and see you later.